Hi, I'm DrummerMartijn. Welcome to this video drum lesson. In this lesson I will explain how to use groupings of 3, 5, 7, 9 and 11 in 16th note drum fills. And I will also explain why I need all these calculations on my whiteboard to do so. I get a lot of questions on what so-called groupings are and how you can apply them to the drum kit. A grouping or linear phrase is a predetermined amount of notes of equal note value grouped together and played in a sequence. If you know how to use groupings in your drum fills, the creative possibilities will be endless. So if you want to become a better drummer, this is definitely something to look into. I came up with an easy to use system which is basically an overview of how everything is connected when applying groupings to 1 bar and 2 bar 16th note drum fills. So let's start with groupings of 3. As a starting point, let's pick this grouping of 3, a sequence of 16th notes with the sticking right, left, left. If you want to apply this grouping to a grid of 16th notes in 1 bar of 4/4 time, you can play it for 5 times before you will have to add 1 additional note to make it to the first beat of the next bar. Because 5 times 3 plus 1 equals 16. So I'm playing my right hand strokes as accents on the toms and my left hand strokes as ghost notes on the snare. The last bass drum is the +1. So let's speed it up. Okay, so this is the whole basic concept. And notice how the musical phrase sounds. Tak, 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 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1. I can even loop it. Tak, 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 and so on. With this established information, we now can do a couple of things. First of all, the formula 5 times 3 plus 1 works for every grouping of 3, so not just right, left, left. You could also play right, left, kick, or right, kick, kick, or left, right, right. It doesn't change the formula, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And another thing, you don't necessarily have to stick to the basic order of the sequence 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, plus 1. You could also play 3, 3, 1, 3, 3, 3, or 1, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. By altering the sequence order, you will also change the musical phrase. So let's listen to the various possibilities and try to hear the little differences. So let's take it to the next level, 2-bar fills. In a 2-bar fill in 4/4 time, we obviously now have 32 16th notes. And we can play our grouping of 3 for 10 times before we have to add 2 additional notes, because 10 times 3 plus 2 equals 32. That will sound like this. Make sure to practice this at home to a metronome or click track, so you can really check yourself. And you also might want to record yourself. Of course, everything I told you about the 1-bar fills can be applied to 2-bar fills as well. So various stickings and various sequence orders. I'm not going to show you everything because we don't have time for that and there are so many options. But I recommend to just take a piece of paper and write down some sticking variations and some sequence orders and explore this for yourself. Here are some ideas. Let's finish this first section with some alternative sequence orders for you to check out yourself at home. Looking at our basic sequence order in a 1-bar fill, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 and 1, you could argue that the last 3 and the additional 1 could be played as a grouping of 4 as well. This will give you some new options when you are playing around with the sequence order. In the next example, I will play right, left, right, kick as a grouping of 4. The same principle goes for our 2-bar fills. For example, you could exchange 2 groupings of 3 for a grouping of 6. Or maybe play a grouping of 5 instead of a grouping of 3 and 2. Anyway, let's face the fact that there is an enormous amount of possibilities for you to explore. But first, let's go to the next chapter. Last year I already did a comprehensive video on groupings of 4 called Everything You Need to Know About Groupings of 4. So let's skip that for now and let's dive straight into more uneven or odd groupings, because they are way more interesting anyway. So let's talk about groupings of 5 in 16th note drum fills for a while. In my system overview, you can see that we're keeping the basic sticking right, left, left, but by putting another right, left in front of it, we're extending it from a grouping of 3 to a grouping of 5. If you want to play this grouping of 5 over a grid of 16th notes in 1 bar of 4/4 time, you obviously can play it for 3 times before you have to add 1 additional note to make it to the first beat of the next bar. Because 3 times 5 plus 1 equals 16. And this is how that sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's speed it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now try some different orchestrations. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like with the grouping of 3, again notice the musical phrase. Tak, 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 kada. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1. Try to recognize and memorize this musical phrase so you know it by heart. Because even when you change the stickings of your fill, this musical phrase or formula will stay the same throughout. Here are some alternative stickings for a grouping of 5, but still played in a basic sequence order. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like we've already discussed in the first chapter, you can change the order of the sequence. So instead of the regular 5, 5, 5, 1, you could also play 5, 5, 1, 5, 5, 1, 5, 5, or 1, 5, 5, 5. That sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. On an interesting side note, if you want to have even more creative possibilities, you could also interpret 5551 as 556, because 5 plus 1 equals 6, which means you have also additional sequence orders like 5, 6, 5 and 6, 5, 5. In the next example, I will play as a grouping of 6 the paradiddle-diddle, so right, left, right, right, left, left. A bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's have a look at the 2-bar fill variation. 32 16th notes means that we can play our grouping of 5 for 6 times before we have to add 2 additional notes, because 6 times 5 plus 2 equals 32. With our basic sticking right, left, left, that will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, there are a million ways to orchestrate this fill. And you can also add your own stickings or play various accent patterns. If you are in need of some inspiration, please check out my previous videos, The Definitive Guide to Groupings of 5 and Groupings of 5 with your non-leading hand. About the sequence order variations, there are quite a few. In the next example, I will play the 2 shifting notes as accents on the snare. If you want to go even further, you could also try to play a 5 and a 2 as a 7, leaving you again with a whole series of new sequence orders. Definitely something to check out. If you've watched the first 2 sections of this lesson, then probably by now you're getting the hang of it. So let's check out the next odd grouping. In our system overview, we're adding another right-left to our basic sticking, extending it to a grouping of 7. In 1 bar of 16th notes in 4/4 time, you will be able to play this grouping only twice before you have to add 2 additional notes, because 2 times 7 plus 2 equals 16. Here are some improvised possible orchestrations of the same sticking. 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course you can also change the sequence order, leaving you with 3 options. The regular 7-7-2, 7-2-7 and 2-7-7, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Longer groupings work very well in longer musical phrases, so let's have a look at the 2-bar fill sequence. Our grouping of 7 will fit 4 times in 2 bars of 16th notes, leaving you with 4 additional notes. These 4 notes can be just single strokes, right, left, or you can pick a grouping of 4. In the next example, I will play right, left, kick as a grouping of 4. Besides the regular sequence order 7-7-7-7-4, there are 4 other combinations. Try to hear the little differences in each musical phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, this is just one possible sticking. There are many more options, and there are even more ways to orchestrate them around the drum kit. So I recommend to really spend some time working on this stuff and trying to get everything in your active playing. One of my favorite ways to play a grouping of 7 is the way John Blackwell used to do it. If you want to know why, then check out my drum lesson, the John Blackwell drum lick. Meanwhile, let's go to the next chapter. Welcome to chapter 4, and now it's getting interesting. Here's the next grouping in the system overview. By adding another right-left to our basic sticking, we now have a grouping of 9. In one bar of 16 notes in 4/4 time, you can play a grouping of 9 only once, before you have to add 7 additional notes, because 9 plus 7 equals 16. These 7 additional notes could be played as just single strokes, but I prefer to play it as a grouping of 7 like we did in the previous chapter. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looking at our sequence order options, in this case we basically have only 2 options, 9-7 and 7-9. But by dividing 7 into 2 smaller groupings, namely 3 and 4, we can create 2 additional combinations, 3-9-4 and 4-9-3. Let's listen to all these combinations. In a 2-bar fill situation, you'll end up with the sequence 9-9-9-5, because 3 times 9 plus 5 equals 32. Notice that there are multiple ways to play these last 5 additional notes. In the next examples, I will use the sticking right-left kick as a grouping of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you've got this musical phrase in your system, let's try the alternative sequence orders. Besides the regular 9-9-9-5, we have 9-9-5-9, 9-5-9-9, and of course 5-9-9-9, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. like before, again, there are so many ways you can play these kinds of sequences. In my drum lesson video, the 9-9-9-5 fill, I'm demonstrating one of my favorite orchestrations, so check that one out. Another fun way of using groupings of 9 in 2-bar fills is by combining them with groupings of 7. Although 9-7-9-7 and 7-9-7-9 are not that interesting because they're basically repeated 1-bar fills, 9-9-7-7 and 7-7-9-9 make good sounding sequences, like this. This is the final part of my comprehensive video drum lesson about groupings, but we're going out with a bang for sure. In the system overview, we're adding for the last time another right, left in front of the basic sticking, creating a grouping of 11. Well, this might be something you won't play every day, but now you know how the system works, it's not that difficult anymore. In 1 bar of 16 notes in 4/4 time, you can play a grouping of 11 only once, leaving you with 5 additional notes. These 5 remaining notes can be played as a grouping of 5, in this case with the sticking right, left, left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unfortunately, there's not so much you can do with a grouping of 11 in a 1 bar fill sequence. You can play 11-5 or 5-11. If you would divide this grouping of 5 into 2 and 3, you can get 2 alternative sequence combinations, 2-11-3 and 3-11-2, like this. Even in a 2 bar fill situation, a grouping of 11 still won't fit nicely into 2 bars of 16 notes. Although you can play it twice, you'll end up with no less than 10 remaining notes, because 2 times 11 plus 10 equals 32. In the next example, I will divide the 10 remaining notes into 2 groupings of 5, creating the sequence 11-11-5-5. Obviously, you can play around with the order of the sequence, but 11, 5, 11, 5 or 5, 11, 5, 11 are just repeated one-bar fills, so not that interesting. The same goes for 11, 5, 5, 11 or 5, 11, 11, 5. Only 11, 11, 5, 5 and 5, 5, 11, 11 are actual two-bar musical phrases. Therefore, another more creative option would be to divide the 10 remaining notes into groupings of 7 and 3 or 6 and 4. By doing that, you suddenly do have a lot of new possible sequence orders. In the next example, I will play a few combinations. There is one way you can fit a grouping of 11 nicely into a two-bar fill of 16 notes. By starting one 16th note earlier. If I start on the 4E and A instead of the 1, I can play exactly 3 groupings of 11 before landing on the 1 again. Because 3 times 11 equals 33. This is how that sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well guys, this was the very last exercise in my video drum lesson about groupings. I gave you a ton of information, so I really hope you've enjoyed it and picked up a few things along the way. I'm gonna finish with a short drum solo based on everything we talked about, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and I hope to see you next time. I'm DrummerMartijn. Bye bye.